Here are all 9 keepsakes in Elden Ring, and my take on which one will serve you the best during your journey through the lands between. Number 1. The Crimson Amber Medallion keepsake is a talisman that when equipped will raise your maximum HP by 6%. In addition to being available as a keepsake, this talisman can also be obtained from the nomadic merchant at the eastern side of the Weeping Peninsula for 1,500 runes. Having more HP enables you to take more hits, and gives you the time to learn the patterns and movesets of your enemies. So whether you are leveling up vigor, equipping talismans, great runes, armor, or utilising consumable items, these will all help you survive for longer in any battle you take on. As a keepsake, the Crimson Amber Medallion will really help. However, as it can be obtained within the first hour of the game, providing you head to the Weeping Peninsula first, there are other keepsakes that would have more value for your overall playthrough. Number 2. The Lands Between Rune keepsake is a consumable item that gains you 3,000 runes when used. Runes can be used to level up your character stats at any site of grace, after meeting Melina for the first time. They can also be used to purchase various items from merchants located around the Lands Between, and are also needed for upgrading your weapons. When upgrading your character stats, every time you increase a level, the cost to increase to the next level gets higher, and with that in mind, 3,000 runes won't go very far, and even if you utilise them at the very start of the game, you would only be able to increase your character by 3 or 4 levels depending on which starter class you picked. As the Lands Between rune is a consumable item, as a keepsake it will only benefit you once, and as you can acquire runes from every enemy you kill, and as loot throughout the Lands Between, choosing this as your keepsake is not a worthwhile choice. Number 3. The Golden Seed keepsake is an upgrade item that when used increases the total number of Crimson and Cerulean Flask charges, which restores a portion of your HP or FP respectively. You start the game with 4 flask charges, and by using Golden Seeds you can increase the total amount of charges to 14, which can be split between the Crimson Flask and Cerulean Flask however you wish. As you increase your flask charges, the amount of Golden Seeds required goes up. You need 1 seed for each upgrade up to 6 flasks, 2 seeds per upgrade up to 8 flasks, 3 seeds per upgrade up to 10 flasks, 4 seeds per upgrade up to 12 flasks, and finally 5 seeds per upgrade up to the maximum 14 flasks. Therefore, you will need a grand total of 30 Golden Seeds. On a single playthrough, you can find well in excess of 40 Golden Seeds dotted around the map, so even if you don't choose this as your keepsake, it won't prevent you from obtaining the maximum flask charges. That being said, the Golden Seed is the best item to choose for your keepsake, as once you have used it to increase your flask charge, you will always reap the benefit of doing so. Having the ability to refill a portion of either your HP or FP will always be beneficial to your playthrough, whether you are at the start or end of your journey. Before we move on to the next one, if you are enjoying the video, don't forget to like and subscribe, and ring that bell to make sure you don't miss out on even more Elden Ring content. Number 4. The Fanged Imp Ashes keepsake is a spirit summon that when used will summon 2 Fanged Imp spirits that can aid you in attacking and distracting your enemies. Spirit summons can only be used when you are near to a rebirth monument, which is an obelisk-shaped statue. But not all rebirth monument areas will have a physical statue, but they will always be indicated by the white monument icon located on the side of your screen. Rebirth monuments can be found all over the map, from most boss arenas, legacy dungeons, self-contained combat areas, and also dotted around the open world. The Fanged Imp Ashes can also be purchased from the isolated merchant located down the road from the main academy gate Site of Grace for 2,000 runes. Small spoiler alert, in addition to them being used to aid in battle, the Fanged Imp Ashes can also be used as one of 2 potential solutions to solve the riddle to open the Ulbanarik Rise Tower. Spirit Ashes offer a very handy mechanic for aiding you in battle, whether it be in a boss fight or simply against open field enemies. And while I highly recommend that players utilise this mechanic throughout the game, as a keepsake, the Fanged Imp Ashes don't offer as much utility as other keepsakes, especially as it can be purchased relatively early in the game. Number 5. Choosing the Crackpot keepsake will give you 3 containers required for crafting throwing pots, a consumable item that can be thrown at enemies causing a variety of damage or debuffs. Whether you choose them as a keepsake or not, you can obtain a total of 20 crackpots throughout the game, from various merchants and as loot on the floor. The crackpot itself is reusable, so once you have used one to craft a throwing pot of your choice, and then thrown it at an enemy, the crackpot will return to your inventory to later be used to craft into another throwing pot. You can create a whole variety of throwing pots, from fire pots, poison pots, sleep pots to magic pots, and a whole lot more on top of that. In order to make these pots though, you will need to find the cookbooks, which can be purchased from a variety of merchants or found around the Lands Between. Utilising throwing pots is a very handy way of dishing out a wide array of elemental damages to your enemies, and is often an overlooked mechanic in the game, so I highly recommend getting to grips with the crafting system and utilising these pots of death and destruction. However, as they can be easily obtained in game, I would not recommend them as your keepsake, especially as you can purchase 3 from the first merchant you encounter at the very start of the game. Number 6. Throughout the Lands Between, you will find certain areas and rooms locked behind seals. These seals can only be unlocked by inserting Stonesword Keys into the imp statues at their entrance. If you choose it as your keepsake, you will obtain 2 Stonesword Keys, and in total there are 81 available. These can be obtained from various merchants and are also dotted around the game as loot. Currently, you will only need 47 Stonesword Keys in order to access all of the areas locked behind the Imp statue seals. As it stands, due to being able to obtain 34 more Stonesword Keys than you actually require for your playthrough, doesn't make this a very worthy keepsake to pick. And granted, while the developers may include more Imp statue seals in the Shadow of the Erdtree DLC, it would also be safe to assume they will include more Stonesword Keys as well. Overall, I would not recommend the Stonesword Key as your keepsake, as they can be easily obtained throughout the game, and if you do encounter an Imp statue seal that you don't have enough keys for, well, you can simply mark it on your map and return to it later. Number 7. The Bewitching Branch is a consumable item, and if chosen as your keepsake will give you 5, that when used enables you to turn foe into friend. That's right, if you get close enough to an enemy and use a single Bewitching Branch, for a small amount of FP it will switch an enemy's aggro, causing them to attack other enemies around them for 3 minutes, which can come in handy if you find yourself in a situation where you are being overwhelmed by multiple foes. The Bewitching Branch can also be obtained via the crafting kit, and to do this you will first need the number 3 Thiever's Cookbook, which can be obtained from Gideon Ofnir after completing part of his questline, or it can be purchased from the Twin Maiden Husks in the Round Table Hold if you didn't collect it from Gideon in time. In addition to crafting them, you can also purchase 5 Bewitching Branches from the Nomadic Merchant located near the Bellum Church in the Liurnia of the Lakes area for 1600 runes each. 3 can also be found on a corpse surrounded by bats, on a lower ledge north of the Church of Pilgrimage in the Weeping Peninsula. It is worth noting that the Bewitching Branch does not work on all enemies, and will not work on any bosses. That being said, it can come in handy with the Commander Nile boss fight. While it is extremely fun and handy to turn your enemies against each other, as there are multiple ways of obtaining the Bewitching Branches, choosing this as your keepsake would not serve you well in the long run. Number 8. The Boiled Prawn is a consumable item, and if chosen as a keepsake will give you 5 boiled prawns that when used will boost your physical damage negation by 15% for 60 seconds. They can also be purchased from the Blackguard Big Bogart at the Boiled Prawn Shack in Liurnia of the Lakes for 600 runes. It goes without saying that any item that reduces the amount of damage you take during combat is an extremely useful item to have, as it can mean the difference between life and death. Choosing the Boiled Prawn as your keepsake will certainly help you if you come across a boss slightly underleveled, but due to being able to buy an infinite amount relatively early in the game, and as there are several talismans that can be obtained throughout your playthrough that will have similar effects to the Boiled Prawn, makes this item not very valuable as your only keepsake. Number 9. Shabriri's Woe is a talisman that when equipped will attract enemy aggression towards yourself. You may be thinking, why on earth would I want to attract enemies towards me? Well, if you are planning on using Spirit Ashes or summons during your playthrough, then if you have this talisman equipped, as long as you are regularly attacking the boss or enemy, your Spirit Ash or summon will be able to keep attacking without being challenged, thereby keeping your allies alive for as long as possible. In addition to being available as a keepsake, Shabriri's Woes can also be found in the Frenzied Flame village on a corpse on the steps of a building in the far northwest of the village. While being able to more effectively manage enemy aggro makes this talisman very useful, its use is limited to only those who use summons or participate in co-op. I also feel that while it may have its uses in early game for anyone struggling with certain bosses, by the time managing boss aggro becomes a real issue, you'll already be in a position to obtain this from the Frenzied Flame village, negating the need to have it as a keepsake. And with that in mind, it is not an item I would personally recommend you choose. So now that I've gone over all 9 keepsakes, you have all the information needed to make your choice on which keepsake to choose, because it is your playthrough and nobody else's, so pick whichever one you want. There are no wrong choices. That being said, my personal recommendation would be the Golden Seed. Having the ability to use an extra charge of your flask, whether it be to fill up a portion of HP or FP, is invaluable, whether you're at the start of the game or the end. Having the ability to restore health more often means you can last longer in fights, and therefore gain the experience and practice needed to eventually survive the encounter. Every keepsake is useful in one way or another, but I find it extremely difficult to recommend any of the other items, especially the consumables, as they all can be obtained relatively early in the game, and none of them barring the Crimson Medallion have the long-term value that the Golden Seed has in increasing your flask charges. And for now, that's it. I really hope that you have found this keepsake guide useful, and more importantly, I hope the information serves you well as you take on your journey through the lands between. Let me know in the comments section below which keepsake you picked for your first playthrough, and which keepsake you now think is the best option. As always, thanks for watching, and don't forget to like and subscribe for more Elden Ring content.